Well, as you have been hearing in the news, a couple from Maple Ridge are raising concerns about the way the medical system dealt with their stillbirth. Now, losing a child at 33 weeks is hard enough, and they say, though, what happened afterward made it even worse. And producer of CBC's Investigative Unit, Jodie Martinson, is with us to share their story this morning. Good morning to you, Jodie.
Hi, Stephen.
So what happened here?
Well, Laura and Nick Bourdignon struggled to get pregnant, so they turned to a long process of IVF. They went through a miscarriage as well. And then finally they got pregnant again, and it was at 33 weeks last September when Laura came home from school. She's an elementary school teacher, and she didn't feel any kicks. They went to the hospital, she was induced, and delivered their daughter, Michaela Poppy.
I was happy to hold her and devastated she wasn't breathing.
Being able to hold her was everything. It was very hard, obviously, because the first time you hold your daughter is the last time. But it was a very painfully beautiful moment. And I think it meant a lot to Laura, too.
So they held Michaela's body for a couple of very precious hours, and they were presented with an option of sending her body to BC Children's for an autopsy, which they did because they wanted to learn what might have gone wrong to help them if they got pregnant again.
All right. And is that what usually happens after a stillbirth?
It's really recommended by doctors, so you can get those answers. So Laura and Nick just trusted the system, and about a month goes by, and then in late October, Nick goes to check the mail, and inside he finds a bill from the Provincial Health Services Authority. It is addressed to SB Michaela Poppy. SB, he later learns, is an abbreviation for stillborn. So Nick, who is a cop, opens it, pieces together it's a bill for his daughter's autopsy, including an itemized list of the tests.
We'd gone weeks without hearing anything. And now I'm looking at a piece of paper that's addressed to my daughter and says everything they did to her, which, once again, I'm no fool. I understand how autopsies work. I've seen autopsies performed. They are not pretty. But at the same time, to then give an itemized breakdown, it was soul crushing and just wrong.
Nick looks at the date and he builds a timeline in his head, and he realizes the autopsy had happened 2 weeks earlier. So why hasn't he gotten a call to pick up Michaela's remains?
And why hasn't he? I mean, should he have received a call by then? Would that be the normal course of events?
He sort of stands there and grapples with this question. Could this be the normal process? Yeah. And it really hadn't been what they had been promised. They were promised that the autopsy would happen as promptly as possible, then Michaela's body would be transferred to the funeral home, and they would get a call to pick up her ashes.
I think one of the big things that we wanted was, well, we want her to be back. Yes, we know she's not coming home the way that we want her to come home, obviously. But it was this notion that, when she'd be home, she'd be safe. She'd be with her parents. So in terms of being able to start even conceptualizing, like, where do we go from here? It was very hard to do that until we had her back.
Stephen, this delay and the idea of Michaela's body being left, 2 unnecessary weeks in their minds, it's set back their grief. Nick calls himself the crier in the family, and it was really remarkable to hear him and Laura talk about the stigma around stillbirth and about how much people assumed it was Laura, not Nick, who was experiencing the grief. And so that's a whole story on its own, and I've made a longer documentary that explores more about that. And that's airing in the third part of The Current at 9:30 after your show, or in The Current podcast today.
Okay. So, as you say, I mean, this isn't something you hear talk about very often, and especially men. I mean, what did they end up doing?
So they filed a complaint with the health authority. PHSA responded with an apology to them for the bill and reversed the charges. The couple say they were told it should have been covered under Laura's MSP. There was some kind of error that resulted in the system thinking Michaela was an uninsured person, not a stillborn baby. But Laura and Nick want concrete changes to policy and procedures so this doesn't happen again. So they've filed a complaint with BC's Patient Care and Quality Review Board, who say the process will take some months.
Okay, and so I guess we're left with the question, is this a one-off, one terrible error, or is this something that's systemic or could happen again?
At first, I really thought this was a one-off.
Yeah.
But 2 years earlier, another BC woman complained to PHSA about her baby's body being left in the morgue at BC Children's for 8 weeks. She received a letter from PHSA promising to standardize the process to reduce the risk of this happening again. I showed that letter to Laura and Nick.
That's pretty much the same as ours.
Yeah.
The letter looks similar to you?
Oh, yeah.
The beginning of the letter looks very similar.
Standardizing this process going forward will be key to reducing the risk of this occurring again. This was 2022, right?
2 years later.
Yep.
The executive director of BC Women's and BC Children's Hospital sent me a statement. She offered her most sincere apologies for any additional stress the families experienced in both of these cases. And she said, we take these matters incredibly seriously, have an obligation to learn from families. And she says the hospital leaders are taking action. I should add, I also spoke to a Canadian expert on stillbirth, Dr. Lynn Murphy-Kalbeck. She's the president of the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada. She sees this story as an example of the patchwork system of stillbirth prevention and aftercare in Canada, where things fall through the cracks.
That example, that just horrible story, it just speaks to a larger issue of not having things in place so that no parent will ever go through that. And I think if we look at it on a larger scale, Canada in itself has a lot of work to do on stillbirth.
She was asked by the Public Health Agency of Canada to submit a proposal for what it would take to put together a national action plan, including a standardized protocol for treating remains with respect.
And so how are Laura and Nick doing right now?
They've got Michaela's ashes home now in a little purple heart-shaped urn with a gold inlay butterfly, and it's up on their mantle. And they're sharing their story, what happened to them, and they're going through these official complaint processes because they never want this to happen again, and they see that as a way to show love to Michaela.
There's been a few times where we've had doubt about if we have done enough to fight for her or be good parents. And literally when Nick and I were having that conversation, a huge rainbow appeared. And I was like, okay.
The Bourdagnons have been offered an opportunity to sit down face-to-face with BC Children's Hospital administrators, and that is set to happen next month.
All right. Jodie, thank you so much.
Thanks, Stephen.
Jodie Martinson, producer of the CBC B.C. Investigative Unit.